I was having dinner with my family. My son-in-law looked at me and said loudly, "Is this useless old woman going to eat everything again?" The whole table laughed. I stood up slowly, wiped my mouth, and said, "Excuse me." The next morning, the bank called him. But let me tell you how I got to that moment, because that night, while everyone was laughing, something inside me stopped breaking and started hardening. My name is Sophia Reynolds. I am 70 years old, have 3 children, 7 grandchildren, and a story I never thought I'd have to tell. For decades, I was the woman who gave everything without asking for anything in return. The one who cooked for 20 people every Sunday. The one who watched sick grandkids while their parents worked. The one who lent money without signed IOUs because family doesn't need paperwork. That Thursday dinner was in the house where I lived with my husband, Henry, for 42 years. The same house where I raised my children, where I hung photos of every birthday, every graduation, every baptism. The sage green walls I painted myself when I still had the strength to climb a ladder. The solid oak dining set we bought with Henry's first paycheck as an engineer. But that night, sitting at my own table, I felt like an intruder. Valerie, my youngest daughter, had prepared roast chicken with gravy. Scott, her husband, was sitting at the head of the table. My seat, the place where Henry sat every night for 4 decades, was now his. I occupied a chair in the corner, near the kitchen, as if I were the hired help waiting for orders. The grandkids, Matt, 12, and Rachel, 9, were glued to their smartphones. They didn't even look up when I served the mashed potatoes. Valerie looked tired, with deep circles under her eyes, and her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Scott was wearing a new shirt, a designer brand, the kind that costs what I used to spend on groceries for the whole week. I started to serve myself a second helping of chicken, just a little more. I had cooked for years, but now I rarely ate comfortably in my own home. I always felt like I was in the way, taking up space, wasting resources that didn't belong to me. That was when Scott let those words slip out. "Is this useless old woman going to eat everything again?" The fork froze in my hand. I looked around the table. Matt smiled while looking at his cell phone. Rachel stifled a giggle. Valerie, my Valerie, lowered her gaze to her plate and said nothing. Scott laughed louder, as if he had just told the best joke in the world. "Just kidding, mother-in-law. Don't get mad. It's just that you repeat, and then you complain that your stomach hurts." My throat burned, not from the gravy, but from the words I wanted to scream but couldn't get out. I wiped my mouth with the cloth napkin, the one I embroidered 30 years ago with my family's initials. I placed the fork on the plate carefully, making as little noise as possible. I stood up. "Excuse me." No one responded. No one asked if I was okay. As I climbed the stairs to my room, the smallest one in the house, the one that used to be the sewing room, I heard them laughing again. Someone turned on the TV. I closed the door. I sat on the bed that squeaked every time I moved. And there, in the dark, with the taste of the roast still in my mouth, I made the most important decision of my life. No more. I took out my phone, an old model that Matt had called prehistoric last month. I searched for a number I hadn't dialed since Henry's funeral. Mr. Maurice Sullivan, my attorney, the same one who drafted my husband's will, the one who knew every detail of what I owned. It rang 3 times. 4. "Sophia? What's going on, Maurice? I need to see you tomorrow, first thing in the morning. And bring all the documents. All of them." There was silence on the other end. Then, in a serious voice, "Are you sure?" I looked at the closed door. Downstairs, I could hear an action movie. Explosions, shouting, laughter. More sure than ever. I hung up. I took a deep breath, and for the first time in the 5 years since Henry died and I let Valerie and Scott help me with everything, I felt something resembling clarity. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I knew that humiliation would be the last one. Because what Scott didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the useless old woman had built a net worth they could barely imagine. And tomorrow I would start protecting it. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay staring at the cracked ceiling of my room, listening to the sounds of a house that no longer felt like mine. The TV turning off past midnight, Scott's heavy footsteps going up the stairs, the door of the master bedroom closing, the one that was my bedroom for 42 years. I got up before dawn, 5 a.m. Outside it was still dark, but I couldn't stay still anymore. I opened the nightstand drawer and took out a rusty metal box, the same one I'd kept since I got married. Inside were documents I hadn't reviewed since Henry's funeral. I needed to remember who I was before I became the shadow living in the corner of her own house. My full name is Sophia Reynolds. I was born in Cleveland in 1955. I studied accounting when women of my generation were often encouraged just to find a husband. I graduated with honors. I worked at an auditing firm for 15 years before my first son was born. When I married Henry, he was a freshly graduated civil engineer who barely earned enough to pay the rent on a 2-bedroom apartment. I kept working. My income paid the down payment on this house, the first furniture, the first station wagon we had. But no one remembers that. To my children, Dad was always the provider. I was just Mom, the one who made breakfast and checked homework. What they never knew is that when Henry started his construction company, I was his partner. Not in name, because back then people didn't take women seriously in construction, but I ran the books. I negotiated with suppliers. I found the tax loopholes that saved us thousands of dollars every year. Every dollar Henry earned, I multiplied with smart investments. I bought a commercial building downtown when no one wanted to invest there. Today, it's worth 3 times what I paid. I bought stocks in companies that were just starting out. Some went bust, others grew so much they gave me 300% returns. When Henry died 5 years ago from a massive heart attack, I crumbled. I lost my life partner, my confidant, the only one who knew what my work was worth, even if no one else saw it. And in that moment of weakness, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I gave them access to everything. Valerie came to the funeral with Scott, hugged me crying, and said, "Mom, don't worry about anything. We'll take care of everything." And I, devastated, believed her. I signed a limited power of attorney so she could help me with bank transactions, with deeds, with utility payments. "Just so you don't have to run around so much, Mom. You're not up for these hassles anymore." Scott suggested they move in with me so I wouldn't be alone in such a big house. I accepted. I thought it would be temporary. 3 months, maybe 6. It's been 5 years. Little by little, I stopped making decisions. Scott had an opinion on everything. "Mother-in-law, better not renew that CD. The bank has very low rates. Don't worry about the property tax. I'll pay it with your card. Why do you want to go out? I'll bring you whatever you need." I convinced myself they were taking care of me, that I was a burden and should be grateful they put up with me. But that morning, with the documents spread out on my bed, I saw the truth with brutal clarity. The house in my name. Original deeds kept in a safety deposit box only I could open. 2 commercial units in the city center, in my name, rented to a coffee shop and a boutique. Monthly income of $3,500 deposited into an account Valerie managed for me. An investment account at Citibank, generating interest I had never seen again. And the piece of information that knocked the wind out of me. 2 years ago, Scott asked me to co-sign a business loan. "It's just a formality, Mom. I need a co-signer to open my auto body shop. I won't use a dime of your money, I swear." I co-signed. $60,000. The shop went under in 8 months. Scott told me he'd had bad luck with a partner, that he would pay me back every cent, that he just needed time. I never saw a single dollar back, and the bank never came after me because Scott had kept paying the minimum monthly payments with my money, the money from my rents, the money Valerie supposedly managed. I felt the walls closing in on me. For 5 years I had been blind, trusting, believing my family was protecting me when in reality they were draining me dry, bit by bit. Scott's new truck, Valerie's latest model iPhone, the grandkids' expensive private tutoring, the kitchen remodel we urgently needed, all paid for with my resources while I wore clothes from 10 years ago and bought the cheapest soap at the supermarket. I put the documents in my purse, a frayed fabric tote bag that Matt had called a hobo bag last week. I went downstairs. In the kitchen, Scott was eating scrambled eggs and bacon while watching the news on his tablet. Valerie was ironing her nursing scrubs. The kids were still asleep. "Good morning," I said in the most neutral voice I could muster. Scott didn't even look up. "There's coffee on the stove." I poured myself some. The coffee was cold. No one had left fresh coffee for me. "I'm going out for a while," I announced. "I have some errands pending." "Errands?" Valerie frowned. "What errands, Mom?" "If you want, I'll go with you." "Not necessary, honey. I'm just going to see Mr. Sullivan." Scott finally looked up. His eyes narrowed. "The lawyer?" What for? I smiled. A small, calm smile. Old people things. Boring paperwork. I took my bag and left before they could ask any more questions. Outside, the sun was just starting to warm the asphalt. I walked 3 blocks to the main avenue and hailed a cab. Sullivan and Associates, please. As the taxi moved through the morning traffic, I took out my phone and looked again at the bank statements I had printed in silence the night before when everyone was asleep. The numbers didn't lie. In 5 years, I had lent my family over $100,000 between the loan guarantee, the renovation payments, and the daily expenses Scott charged to our shared account. And never, not once, had they asked me what I needed. The taxi stopped in front of a glass building. I paid and went up to the 4th floor. The receptionist recognized me immediately. "Mrs. Reynolds, Mr. Sullivan is waiting for you." I entered the office. Maurice was 73 years old, hair completely white, with a look that had seen 1,000 families destroy themselves over money. "Sophia," he said, standing up to hug me, "tell me everything." And there, sitting across from the mahogany desk, with the co-signing contracts spread out in front of me, I told him every humiliation, every slight, every poisoned comment disguised as a joke. When I finished, Maurice clasped his hands on the desk. "What do you want to do?" I took a deep breath. "I want to get my life back, and I want them to learn that dignity is not negotiable, not even with family." Maurice nodded slowly, then opened a folder and started pulling out documents. "Then let's start here." Maurice spread the documents on his desk like a surgeon preparing his instruments. Each paper represented a decision. Each signature I placed would be a step towards something that terrified and liberated me at the same time. "Sophia, before making any move, I need you to understand something," he said firmly. "Once you start, there is no going back. Your family is going to react. Probably badly. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about the laughter last night, about Valerie's eyes looking down, about Scott sitting in Henry's spot as if it had always belonged to him. I am prepared. We spent 3 hours reviewing every detail. Maurice explained options I didn't know I had, rights I had forgotten I possessed. First, the loan guarantee. Since Scott had never officially informed me about the real status of his debt, and since I signed under false pretenses, he said, the business was doing well when it was already failing, I could formally withdraw my guarantee for any future renewals. The bank will have to restructure the debt with only Scott as responsible. They're going to call him within 8 hours, Maurice warned. When they see he no longer has backing, they're going to demand collateral or immediate payment. Perfect. Second, the power of attorney I gave Valerie was limited. She could make transactions, yes, but not sell properties or take out loans in my name. However, that power could be revoked at any time. If you revoke the POA, she won't be able to touch your accounts, or the rents, or the investments anymore. My hand trembled over the document, revoking my own daughter's power of attorney, telling her I didn't trust her. But did I really trust her, or was I just afraid of being alone? "What about the house?" I asked. "They live there with me." Maurice leaned back in his chair. "The house is yours. They are your guests. You can ask them to leave at any time. Legally, you have every right. Guests. In my own home, my daughter and son-in-law were just guests. Give me time to think about that," I said. "I don't want to leave Valerie on the street. She's still my daughter." "Of course. But Sophia, you don't deserve to live like a prisoner in your own home either." I signed the first documents. Withdrawal of the guarantee, revocation of the power of attorney. Maurice would stamp them and deliver them to the bank and the county clerk that same afternoon. "One more thing," I said before leaving. "I need to change my will." Maurice raised an eyebrow. "What do you have in mind?" "I want to create a trust for my grandchildren, something that neither Valerie nor Scott can touch, something that serves only for education, college, books, courses, but they cannot use a single cent for themselves." "Smart. How much?" I ran the numbers mentally, $150,000 from my investment account. Maurice whistled softly. "That's going to hurt when they find out." "Let it hurt. My grandkids deserve a future. Their parents deserve a lesson." I left the office past 2 p.m. I hadn't eaten anything, but I wasn't hungry. I had something better, a plan. I walked through the city aimlessly. I needed to think, process, decide how much I was willing to fight. I stopped in front of a small church, St. Mary's. I went in. The smell of incense and beeswax candles enveloped me like a hug from my childhood. I sat in a back pew and looked at the altar. "Henry," I whispered, "I wish you were here. You always knew what to do." But Henry wasn't there, and I had spent 5 years waiting for someone else to solve my life. I closed my eyes. I recalled fragments of the last few years. Not just the humiliation of last night. There were signs from much earlier. My 68th birthday that no one remembered. Scott organized a BBQ that day to watch the football game with his friends. He didn't even ask if I wanted to invite anyone. Last Christmas, when I bought gifts for everyone with my money, and they gave me an extra-large sweater so you're comfortable, mother-in-law. It was hideous, mustard yellow with a reindeer embroidered on it. I wore it once so as not to be rude, and then shoved it to the back of the drawer. The times I went down to the living room and Scott changed the channel without asking what I was watching. "You've seen enough, mother-in-law. Now it's my show's turn." The meals where I served everyone first, and when it was my turn to eat, the food was already cold. No one ever waited for me. The comments. God, the comments. "You're too old for that. Better stay home. Don't want you getting tired. Leave it to me. You don't understand how this works anymore. Oh, mother-in-law, you and your ideas from the 50s, small stabs disguised as concern, and I accepted them all, one by one, because I was afraid. Afraid of being a bother, afraid they would leave me alone, afraid of being the bitter mother no one wants to visit. But last night, when the whole table laughed at me, something changed. I understood that I was already alone, that living surrounded by people who despise you is worse than living in dignified solitude. I opened my eyes. An elderly woman was lighting a votive candle in front of a statue of the Virgin Mary. She was my age, maybe older, but she moved with purpose, with calm, like someone who knew exactly who she was. I wanted to be like her. I stood up, put a $20 bill in the donation box, and left the church with crystal clarity. I took a cab back home. It was almost 5 p.m. When I entered, the house was silent. Valerie hadn't arrived from her shift at the hospital. Scott was probably at the shop or at some bar with his friends. The grandkids were at school or after-school programs. I went up to my room and took an old suitcase out of the closet, the same one I used on my honeymoon almost 50 years ago. I started packing clothes, not much, just the essentials. I wasn't leaving yet, but I needed to have everything ready for when the moment came. I also put the important documents in a folder, copies of everything I signed today. The bank statements, the property deeds, everything. At 7, I heard the front door open. Voices. Scott had arrived. I went down to make dinner as always. I acted normal. I served tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches. I set the table, called everyone. We ate in uncomfortable silence. Scott looked at me sideways, as if he knew something had changed but couldn't identify what. "How did it go with the lawyer?" Valerie asked. "Fine. Just updated some papers." "What papers?" I smiled. "Boring stuff, honey. Nothing important." Lie. It was the most important thing I had done in years. That night, lying in bed, I checked my phone. Maurice had sent me a text. "Documents delivered. The bank will receive the notification tomorrow morning. Get ready." I replied, "Ready." I turned off the light, and for the first time in 5 years, I slept without that knot in my stomach. Because I knew that tomorrow, when the bank called Scott, when he discovered that the useless old woman had taken away his safety net, everything would change. And I would be ready for whatever came. The real war doesn't start with shouting. It starts with silence, with decisions made in secret, with reclaiming the power they took from you while you slept. And I had just woken up. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. The alarm didn't even go off. My body knew today was the day. I showered, dressed in beige linen trousers and a simple white blouse. Nothing special. I wanted to look exactly like always, the invisible grandmother who makes breakfast and causes no trouble. I went down to the kitchen, put the coffee on, got out eggs, hash browns, toast, heated the skillet. The movements were automatic after decades of the same routine, but today was different. Every action had a different weight, as if I were preparing my last meal as submissive Sophia, the one who lowered her head and apologized for existing. At 7, Scott came down first. He was wearing a t-shirt from his business that closed months ago, but he kept wearing it as if he were still the owner of something. He sat at the head of the table without saying hello, took his coffee, and started checking his phone. "Good morning," I said in a neutral voice. He grunted something unintelligible. I served his plate, scrambled eggs, hash browns, 3 slices of toast. I put it in front of him. He didn't even look up. Valerie came down 15 minutes later. Her hair was wet, and her scrubs were wrinkled. She smelled of cheap lotion and exhaustion. "Oh, Mom, you shouldn't have bothered," she said, but was already pouring herself coffee. "It's no bother. Lie. Everything was a bother lately, but it wasn't time to say it yet." The grandkids came down dragging their feet, Matt with headphones on, Rachel yawning. They sat without saying hello, took their plates, ate in silence while watching their phones. The table was full of people, and I felt completely alone. Scott finished his breakfast and finally spoke. "Hey, mother-in-law, I need you to sign some papers today." I looked up. "What papers?" "From the bank. They're renewing the loan contract, and they need your updated signature as co-signer." Something cold ran down my back. So he already knew, or was about to find out. "What loan?" I asked, feigning confusion. "The one for the shop, the one you signed 2 years ago, you know." His tone was impatient. "Ah, that one." I took a sip of coffee. "And how is the shop going?" He tensed up. "Good, it's going good." "Really? Because you haven't told me anything in months." Valerie intervened nervously. "Mom, the shop went through a rough patch, but Scott is working on recovering it. That's why he needs to renew the loan." "I understand." I nodded slowly. "And how much do you still owe?" Scott clenched his jaw. "That's between the bank and me, mother-in-law. I just need your signature." "Sure, but if I'm going to sign, I need to know how much I'm guaranteeing." $60,000. Same as before. Lie. Maurice had shown me the real balance. $100,000 with accumulated interest. Scott had refinanced twice without telling me, and each time the debt grew. "I see," I said calmly. "Let me think about it." "Think about it?" Scott slammed his fork down on the plate. "There's nothing to think about. You already signed before. It's just a renewal." "Yes, but before, it wasn't explained to me well. Now I want to understand better before signing anything." His face turned red. "I can't believe this. After everything we've done for you, we give you a home, food, we take care of you, and now you come out with this?" The air thickened. The grandkids stopped looking at their phones. Valerie turned pale. "Scott," Valerie started. "No, Valerie, let me speak." He turned to me. "Look, mother-in-law, I'm going to speak clearly because I'm tired of beating around the bush. This house needs a lot of things. Roof leaks. The bathroom plumbing is old. The patio is a mess. We have plans to remodel, to make this a decent place again." "Remodel? With my money? In my house? And what do I say about those plans?" I asked softly. "You?" He laughed, a short, bitter laugh. "Mother-in-law, with all due respect, you're not up for these things anymore. That's why we're here, to take care of what you can't do anymore." "I see." I placed my cup on the table carefully. "So, I'm not part of the decisions. I'm just the one who signs the papers. Is that right, Mom?" "Of course you count, Mom," Valerie intervened. "It's just that. You know how this is. Scott understands construction, business. We just want to help you." "Help me." That word again. "All right," I said, standing up. "I'm going out for a while. I have some things to do." "Out? Where?" Scott frowned. "To walk. To clear my head. I'll look at the papers when I get back." I took my purse and left before he could question me further. I walked 4 blocks to a small coffee shop. I sat by the window and ordered a latte. I took out my phone. I had a message from Maurice. "The bank just received the official notification. They are going to call Scott between today and tomorrow to inform him that you no longer count as a guarantor. Prepare for the storm." I replied. It already started. He wanted me to sign a loan renewal this morning. He doesn't even know I'm off the contract yet. Typical. He wanted to secure it before the bank called him. "Do not sign anything, Sophia. Nothing." "I won't." I turned off the phone. I looked out the window. People rushed by, office workers on their way to work, children with backpacks heading to school, all with their lives, their problems, their silent battles. How many women like me were out there? How many grandmothers living in their own homes as unwanted guests? How many signing papers they didn't understand because family knows best. I stayed in that coffee shop for 2 hours, not because I was afraid to go back, but because I needed to strengthen my resolve, to remind myself that what I was doing wasn't cruelty, it was justice. It was dignity. It was taking back what they had slowly taken from me with smiles and sweet, poisoned words. When I returned home around noon, Scott was in the living room pacing from one side to the other with the phone glued to his ear. His voice was tense. "Yes, I understand, but there must be a mistake. No, I have my mother-in-law's guarantee. What do you mean it was revoked? When?" He saw me enter. His eyes narrowed. "Wait a moment," he told the person on the phone. He covered the mouthpiece and stared at me. "Did you go to the bank?" "No." "To the lawyer." "I went with my lawyer to update my documents." "I told you yesterday." "What documents?" "Mine, Scott. My properties, my accounts, my guarantees." He turned white, then red, then a shade of purple that made me think he would have a heart attack right there. "You removed the guarantee?" His voice was a rasping whisper. "Why?" he screamed. The phone almost fell from his hand. Valerie came running out of the kitchen. "What's happening? Why are you shouting?" Scott pointed at me with a trembling finger. "Your mother just destroyed my life." "That's what's happening." Valerie looked at me, confused. "Mom, what did you do?" I took a deep breath. This was the moment. The point of no return. I withdrew my co-signature from Scott's loan, and I revoked the power of attorney I gave you 5 years ago. Starting today, no one handles my money except me. The silence that followed was deafening, and in that silence I saw the mask of the perfect family we had pretended to be crumble. Scott hung up the phone. His hands were shaking. Valerie was paralyzed in the middle of the living room, looking at me as if I had just grown a second head. "You can't do this," Scott said. His voice sounded strangely calm, too calm. "You signed a contract, a commitment. A commitment based on lies," I replied. "You told me the shop was doing well, that you only needed a temporary cosigner, that you would pay me back in 6 months, and I was going to pay you back. It's been 2 years, Scott. And not only have you not paid me back, but the debt grew from $60,000 to $100,000. Did you think I wasn't going to find out?" Valerie gasped. "Osuta zero?" Scott turned to her. "It's more complicated than that, Valerie. The interest, the refinancing, the operating costs. You lied to me," I interrupted them both. "And you used my trust to keep getting into debt while living in my house without paying rent, eating my food, spending the money from my properties." "Your house?" Scott finally exploded. "We have maintained this house. I pay the gas, the electricity, the water. With the money from the rents of my commercial units," I said firmly. $3,500 monthly deposited into an account that Valerie supposedly managed for me. Do you know how much of that money I've seen in 2 years? Nothing. $0. Valerie slumped onto the sofa. "Mom, we used that money for household expenses. For everyone. I thought it was okay. I thought it was what you wanted. You never asked me what I wanted. Because you never said anything," Scott shouted. "Always there, quiet, cooking, cleaning. How were we supposed to know you had a problem with something if you never spoke?" "The day before yesterday at dinner, I spoke. You called me a useless old woman, and the whole table laughed. That was my sign that speaking served no purpose." Scott clenched his fists. "It was a joke. A damn joke." Well, I didn't laugh. A dense silence fell. Matt and Rachel had appeared on the stairs, listening to everything. Rachel had tears in her eyes. Matt looked scared. "Mom," Valerie said with a broken voice, "what are you going to do? Are you going to kick us out?" The question floated in the air like a knife suspended. "No," I responded finally. "Not today. But things are going to change radically." "What does that mean?" Scott asked, with suspicion. "It means that we are going to finish this conversation with my lawyer present, tomorrow at 10 a.m. at his office, both of you." "I'm not going to any office," Scott said. "I don't have to report to you." Then, on Monday, I start the legal eviction process and a lawsuit for the $100,000 you owe, plus interest. You decide. His face contorted into a grimace of rage and impotence. "You are threatening me. I am setting boundaries. Something I should have done 5 years ago." I took my bag and went up to my room. My legs were shaking, but I didn't stop until I closed the door. I sat on the bed and took 3 deep breaths. 4, 5. I had done it. I had said everything. There was no going back. My phone vibrated. Maurice, how are you doing? It all exploded. I told them, meeting tomorrow at your office at 10. Perfect. I have all the documents ready. Statements, contracts, receipts. They won't be able to deny anything. Thanks, Maurice. Sophia, are you okay? I thought about it. Was I okay? I had just dynamited my relationship with my daughter and son-in-law. I had probably traumatized my grandkids. My house felt like a battlefield. But also, for the first time in years, I felt alive. I'm okay, I replied. Scared but okay. That's normal. You're doing perfectly. I hung up and looked around my small room. The suitcase I had packed was still under the bed. Maybe I would need it soon. The rest of the day passed in an icy silence. No one came down to eat. I made lentil soup just for myself. I ate in the kitchen, looking out the window toward the backyard, where Henry had planted a lemon tree that no longer bore fruit. At 8 p.m., I heard Scott and Valerie arguing in their room. Muffled shouts, sobs, more shouts. At 9, there was a knock on my door. Valerie entered alone. Her eyes were swollen and red. She sat on the edge of my bed without asking permission. Why didn't you tell me you felt this way? She asked with a broken voice. I told you 1,000 times, with silences, with looks, with leaving the table. You didn't want to see. It's not fair, Mom. You can't blame me for everything. I don't blame you for everything. I blame you for choosing a man who humiliates me over your own mother. I blame you for managing my money as if it were yours. I blame you for never, not once in 5 years, asking me what I needed. I asked you. When, Valerie? When did you ask me if I was happy? If I felt comfortable living in the smallest room of my own house? If it hurt to see you laugh when Scott made fun of me? She broke down crying. I didn't know it was that serious. I thought you understood that was just his way, that he didn't mean it. The problem isn't just Scott. It's that you never defended me. Not once. I'm scared, she whispered. Scared that he'll leave, that I'll be left alone with 2 kids, unable to pay the bills. And there it was. The truth. Valerie hadn't protected me because she needed me less than she needed him, because her fear of being alone was bigger than her love for me. Valerie, I said softly. I was afraid too. Afraid of being alone after your dad died. That's why I allowed everything. But do you know what I learned? That being alone with dignity is better than being accompanied with humiliation. What's going to happen tomorrow? You're going to hear the conditions. And you're going to decide if you can live with them or if you prefer to look for another place. We don't have money for another place. Then you're going to have to learn to respect me and mine. She stood up slowly. At the door, she turned around. I'm sorry I haven't been the daughter you needed. You can still be her. But you have to choose it every day. She left, closing the door gently. I stayed awake until past midnight. I mentally reviewed every document Maurice had prepared for me. The options, the scenarios. Tomorrow I would present my proposal. 6 months to find another place while paying me a symbolic rent of $800 monthly. Partial debt forgiveness. I would only salvage $40,000 of the $60,000 principal I lent. The rest I would write off to close the circle. But with conditions, absolute respect, mandatory family therapy, and never, ever touching my money again without my explicit written authorization. If they rejected the proposal, I would evict them in 30 days and sue for the full $100,000 debt. They were harsh options, but fair, because I had learned something fundamental. Forgiveness without consequences is not forgiveness, it's permission for them to hurt you again. And I was no longer willing to give that permission. The morning arrived gray and heavy, as if the sky knew something was going to break definitively. I got up at 6, dressed carefully in a simple burgundy dress. My pearl necklace Henry gave me on our 20th anniversary, sensible closed-toe shoes. I wanted to look like what I was, a 70-year-old woman who knew exactly what she was worth. I went down to make coffee just for myself. No one else had come down yet. At 8, Scott appeared. He didn't look at me. He poured coffee in silence. He took a bagel from the bread box and sat in front of the TV. Valerie came down 20 minutes later. Her face was puffy from crying so much. The grandkids didn't come down. I guess they had been told to stay in their rooms. "We leave at 9:30, I announced. "The appointment is at 10. The office is 20 minutes from here." No one responded. At 9 sharp, Scott finally spoke. "I'm not going. Then I start the legal process on Monday. I already told you. This is ridiculous. Talking to a lawyer as if we were criminals. You aren't criminals, but you are debtors, and I am the creditor. That's how things work." He stood up abruptly. "You know what, mother-in-law? For 5 years we've put up with you. Your silent complaints, your long faces, your way of playing the victim. You could have said something at any moment. I said it with my exit from the table when you humiliated me, but no one noticed, or worse, no one cared. It was a joke. Jokes are made between equals, Scott. You treat me as if I were your servant, and everyone allows it." Valerie intervened with a trembling voice. "Mom, please, let's talk civilly. I am going to the appointment." "Then I'm going just to accompany you," Scott grunted. "But let it be clear, I'm not signing anything that doesn't suit me." "No one is forcing you to sign anything," I replied. "Just to listen." We left the house at 9:30. We took Scott's car, that brand new Ford Explorer he bought with my money without telling me. The drive was silent, except for the radio on low volume. Valerie sat in the back, looking out the window. I sat in front with my purse on my lap, feeling the weight of the documents inside. We arrived at the office building 5 minutes before 10. We went up in the elevator without speaking. Scott was clenching and unclenching his fists. Valerie was biting her nails. The receptionist showed us in immediately. Maurice was waiting for us in the conference room, not his office. He wanted this to be formal, official. "Good morning," he greeted with a professional tone. "Sit down, please." We settled around a long mahogany table. Maurice across from us with perfectly organized folders, me on his side, Valerie and Scott on the other side, like defendants in a trial because in a way, they were. Maurice opened the first folder. "Let's start by establishing the facts. Mrs. Sophia Reynolds, widow, legal owner of a house located in Naperville, 2 commercial units downtown, an investment account at Citibank for $150,000, and other minor assets, correct?" "Correct," I replied. "In July 2023, you signed as a guarantor for a business loan of $60,000 in the name of Mr. Scott Davies, present here, correct?" "Correct." "The loan was to open an auto body shop which, as you were informed, was going to generate enough profit to pay off the loan in 18 months. Is that so?" Maurice took out a document and slid it across the table toward Scott. "Mr. Davies, this is the current statement of that loan. Can you confirm the balance?" Scott barely looked at it. His jaw was tight. $100,000. "And how much principal have you paid?" Silence. "Mr. Davies, I asked you a question." $12,000, he murmured. Valerie turned to look at him, incredulous. "Only $12,000 in 2 years? The business didn't work out as expected." "The business closed a year ago," Maurice interrupted, "and you have been paying only the minimum interest with the money from Mrs. Sophia's rents, without her explicit knowledge." "She knew," Valerie managed the accounts. Valerie paled. I thought," Mom agreed. "You told me you had talked to her." "Of course I talked to her. I told her I needed the money to maintain the house." "You lied," I said with a firm voice. "You never told me you were using the rents to pay your debt. You told me it was for utilities, for food, for the kids. It was the same thing. Everything was for the family." "No, Scott. It was to save your failed business, to maintain your lifestyle, to buy that car." I pointed out the window toward the parking lot. Maurice took out another document. The car. A 2024 Ford Explorer, value of $45,000, bought in cash with a withdrawal from Mrs. Sophia's rent account in March of last year. Did she authorize that purchase? "I had power of attorney," Scott started. "The power of attorney was Valerie's, not yours, and the power was for administration, not for personal purchases. Legally, that purchase is questionable." Scott stood up abruptly. "This is a circus. You brought me here to humiliate me." "We brought you here to show you the truth," I said, standing up too. "For 5 years you have lived off my money while treating me like garbage. And my daughter let you do it because she was more afraid of losing you than losing me. Mom, that's not fair." Valerie stood up too, tears running down her cheeks. You know what's not fair, Valerie? That on my 68th birthday, no one remembered because Scott organized a party with his friends. That on Christmas you gave me an ugly sweater you bought on clearance while I gave everyone expensive electronics. That every time Scott insulted me, you looked down and stayed quiet. I didn't know what to do. You could have defended me just once. That is the only thing I needed. Maurice cleared his throat. Ladies, sir. Let's sit down. We still have a lot to review. We sat down. Scott's face was red with rage. Valerie was sobbing quietly. Maurice continued with an implacable tone. Besides the loan in the car, we found other questionable expenses. A trip to Cancun last year for $4,500, music lessons for the kids for $400 monthly, subscriptions to streaming services, restaurants, designer clothes, all charged to the account that was supposedly for maintaining the house. Those things were also for the house. For the family, Scott insisted, while Mrs. Sophia bought her clothes at Goodwill and used cheap soap because she believed she had no money, Maurice added. The silence that followed was crushing. Scott finally crumbled. He covered his face with his hands. Okay. Yes, I went too far. I know, but I didn't know how to tell her. The business failed, and I didn't want to look like a loser in front of my family. So, you used me as your personal bank, I said. I was going to pay you back, I swear. With what money, Scott? You don't have a job. The shop closed. Where was the money going to come from? He didn't answer because there was no answer. Valerie spoke with a broken voice. Mom, what do you want us to do? Maurice opened the last folder, the one containing my proposal. Mrs. Sophia has prepared 2 options. The first, you have 6 months to find another place to live. During those 6 months, you will pay rent of $800 monthly. The loan debt is restructured. Of the original $60,000, $20,000 is forgiven. The remaining $40,000 must be paid in installments of $800 monthly over 4 years. If you miss a single payment, the full debt becomes immediately due with legal interest. And the second option? Valerie asked. Eviction in 30 days and a lawsuit for the full $100,000. That would include the seizure of the car and any other assets you possess. Scott looked up. You are destroying me. No. I responded with a firm voice. I am setting boundaries. Something I should have done a long time ago. And Scott, if you accept the first option, there are additional conditions. Which ones? Absolute respect. 0 insults, 0 mockery, 0 derogatory comments, monthly family therapy, all 4 of us, including the kids, and never ever touch my money again without my authorization in writing and notarized. That is impossible, Scott started. Then take the second option, I interrupted him. I already made my decision. Now it's your turn to make yours. Valerie looked at him, Scott looked at her, and in that exchange of glances, I saw everything. The fear, the shame, the helpless rage. We need time to think about it, Valerie said finally. You have until Monday at 5 p.m., Maurice responded. After that, Mrs. Sophia will proceed with the option she considers appropriate. We stood up. Scott left first without saying goodbye. Valerie stopped at the door. Mom, I still love you, despite everything. I love you too, honey. That's why I'm doing this. Because love without boundaries isn't love, it's self-destruction. She left. Maurice and I remained alone in the conference room. You did very well, he said. It doesn't feel good. It never feels good to set boundaries. But it is necessary. I nodded. He was right. I left the building and took a taxi back. I didn't want to go with them. I needed space to breathe. During the ride, I looked out the window. The city kept moving, oblivious to my little family drama. And I realized something. The world didn't end because I had said no more. In fact, the world kept turning, and I kept breathing. And for the first time in years, I was breathing without that crushing weight on my chest. I arrived home before them. The house was empty. The grandkids must be at school. I went up to my room and sat on the bed, waiting. I knew the explosion would come. It was just a matter of time. Half an hour later, I heard the car park, the front door opening with force, heavy steps coming up the stairs, pounding on my door, loud, desperate. Open up. It was Scott. I opened it. He looked unhinged. His eyes were bloodshot and his hair messy, as if he had pulled at it the whole way. We need to talk. We already talked at the office, didn't we? Now we are going to talk for real, without lawyers, without papers, just you and me. Valerie appeared behind him. Scott, please, let me talk to her. I stepped aside and let them pass. The three of us in my small room. Scott walked in circles like a caged animal. Valerie sat on the only chair. I stood by the window. You know what bothers me the most? Scott started. It's not the money. It's not the papers. It's that for 5 years you acted like everything was fine, like you didn't care about anything, and now you come out with this. I acted that way because I was afraid, I replied. Afraid that if I said something, you would leave me alone. Afraid of being the bitter mother-in-law. Afraid of losing my family. Well, you're gonna lose it. That's what you want. I want respect. If to have respect I have to be alone, then yes, I prefer that. Scott laughed. A bitter, broken laugh. Respect, sure. But you never respected my effort. My work, my attempt to get ahead. Your effort? What effort, Scott? You opened a shop with my money, let it fail, and then kept spending my money as if nothing had happened. Where is the effort in that? The business failed. Things happen. I'm not the first nor the last to go bankrupt. You're right. But you are the first to keep living like a rich man when you don't have a dime, with your mother-in-law's money, in your mother-in-law's house, while you insult your mother-in-law. Enough with the insult. It was a joke. It wasn't a joke, I shouted, and it was the first time in 5 years I shouted in that house. It was the summary of 5 years of small slights, of making me feel like I was in the way, of treating me as if I were your servant, not the owner of the house where you live for free. Valerie sobbed. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I turned to her. Do you know when I knew I had lost my daughter? It wasn't when you got married. It wasn't when you moved in. It was the day of my 68th birthday. That day, Scott organized his BBQ with his friends. I went down to the kitchen in the morning, and you were there making coffee. I told you, today I turned 68. And you said, oh, yeah, Mom, happy birthday. And you kept making the coffee without looking at me. Not a hug, not a cake, nothing. That day, I understood I was no longer your priority. I was just another piece of furniture in the house. I don't remember it that way. Because for you, it wasn't important. But for me, it was the day I started to disappear. Scott intervened, this time with a calmer but equally hard tone. And what did you expect? That we treat you like a queen? We all live here. We are family. Families support each other. Families respect each other, I corrected. And support is mutual. It is not just one person giving and everyone else taking. We gave you company so you wouldn't be alone after your husband died. You didn't give me company. You took my house, my privacy, my dignity. That is an exaggeration. I opened the drawer of my nightstand. I took out an old notebook. I had been filling it for the last 6 months without realizing it. Notes, dates, comments that had hurt me. I opened it to a random page and read aloud. March 15. Scott told me not to cook anymore because the food was tasteless. Valerie laughed and said, It's true, Mom. You're getting forgetful with the salt. I turned another page. May 3. Rachel needed help with math homework. I studied accounting. I offered to help her. Scott said, Better leave it. Mother-in-law, you don't even remember those things anymore. I'll help her. Rachel didn't even look at me. Another page. July 22. Matt turned 12. I made a tres leches cake, his favorite since he was a toddler. We cut it after dinner. Matt said, Grandma, this tastes weird. Scott tasted it and said, Yeah, better order one from the bakery next time. I threw half a cake in the trash that night. Valerie was crying silently. Scott had turned pale. I have 32 more pages, I said, closing the notebook. 32 pages of small slights that turned into giant heartbreak. And the day of the dinner with the useless old woman comment was just the straw that broke the camel's back. I didn't know you felt that way, Valerie murmured. Because you never asked. You were so busy keeping Scott happy that you forgot that I also needed someone to take care of me. Scott sat on the edge of my bed, defeated. And now what? You hate us? You want us to disappear from your life? I don't hate you, but I can't go on like this either. I need you to understand something fundamental. The money I spent on you wasn't extra money. It was the fruit of 40 years of work, of sacrifices, of smart decisions. And you squandered it like it was water while making me feel like I was the burden. We are going to pay you back, Scott said. Every dollar, I swear. With what money? I'm going to get a job. A real job. No more own business inventions. I'm going to work for someone else if necessary. Scott is right, Valerie added. I can take extra shifts at the hospital. We can pay. I looked at them both. There was sincerity in their eyes, but there was also desperation, and I couldn't distinguish one from the other. You have until Monday, I repeated. Choose which option you are going to take. But know this, if you choose to stay, the rules change radically. This is still my house. You are my guests. And I am going to start living like the owner I am, not like the employee I became. What does that mean? Valerie asked. It means I am going to take the master bedroom again, the one that was mine and your father's. You can stay in the bedroom where you are now. It's bigger than this one you shoved me into, but no buts. Either you take it, or you leave. Also, I am going to hire someone to clean the house twice a week. I am not going to do it alone anymore. And I am going to pay for it from my rents that will go back to depositing into my personal account, not the family account. That is fair, Valerie admitted in a low voice. And one more thing. The grandkids need to know the truth. Not all the details, but enough to understand that what happened is not normal, that families shouldn't function like this. They're going to hate us, Scott said. They are going to learn that it is different. There was a long silence. Outside, I heard the school bus stop, children's voices, the front door opening. Matt and Rachel had arrived. Talk to each other, I said. Think. Decide. But on Monday at 5, I want an answer, and whatever it is, I will respect it. Because I know how to respect others' decisions, even if they hurt me. They left my room in silence. I heard them going down the stairs, muffled voices talking to the grandkids, more sobs from Valerie. I sat on my bed and looked at the notebook still in my hands. 32 pages of accumulated pain. I wondered how many women in the world had similar notebooks. How many grandmothers, mothers, aunts, writing in silence every wound because they didn't have the courage to say them out loud. I opened the window. The fresh air entered my room. I took a deep breath and took the notebook, that notebook full of sadness, and tore it up page by page, slowly, like a ritual. Because I didn't need it anymore. I had already said everything I had to say. And whatever they said on Monday, I had already won. I had recovered my voice. The weekend was strange, like living with ghosts in a house haunted by newly revealed secrets. Saturday morning, Matt and Rachel avoided me. They entered the kitchen, grabbed cereal, and ran to their rooms. I guess Valerie and Scott had told them something, but not everything. The kids looked at me as if I were a stranger, or worse, the villain of a story they didn't understand. Valerie spent all Saturday locked in her room. I heard her crying through the walls. Scott left early and didn't return until night. He smelled of beer and cigarettes when he entered. I spent the day reorganizing my documents, separating what was mine from what had been ours. It was more than I thought, and less than it should have been. Sunday afternoon, Valerie knocked on my door. Mom, can we talk alone? Sure. We entered my room, and she closed the door. She sat on the bed with her legs crossed, like when she was a girl, and came to tell me her problems at school. But she wasn't a girl anymore. She was a 3-year-old woman with worry lines on her forehead and gray hairs she covered with cheap dye. I don't know where to start, she said. Start where it hurts the most. She took a deep breath. I think you're right about everything. And that is what hurts the most. That for 5 years, without realizing it, I stopped seeing you as my mom and started seeing you as a resource. As someone who was there to facilitate our lives. When did it start? I asked. I don't know. It was gradual. When Dad died, I was devastated. Scott was my support. He held me when I felt I was going to fall. And somehow, I started prioritizing his happiness over everything else because I was afraid that if he wasn't happy, he would leave me, and I couldn't bear another loss. And I didn't count as a loss? You had me. You were there. You were always there. I guess I assumed you would always be there, that you had nowhere to go, that you wouldn't leave. Because I had no options, right? The old widow without her husband, depending on her children. I never thought of it that way, but that was how we treated you. Valerie covered her face with her hands. When did I become this person? My mom taught me to be strong, to defend myself, not to let anyone trample on me, and I trampled on you. It wasn't just your fault. I gave you permission too. Every time I shut up, every time I endured a comment, every time I said it's okay when it wasn't okay. Why did you do it? For the same reason as you. Fear of being alone. Your dad was my partner for 42 years. When he died, I was left empty, and you filled that void. Even if it was with crumbs, it was better than nothing, or so I thought. And now I know that crumbs poison you, that it is better to be hungry with dignity than full of humiliation. Valerie wiped her tears. I talked to Scott last night. After the kids went to sleep, I told him everything. How I felt. How I had failed as a daughter. How I had allowed everything. And what did he say? He got angry first. He said I was being dramatic, that you were manipulating me. But then, he broke. He admitted he had been a jerk, that he took advantage of the situation, that he thought because we had your power of attorney we could do whatever we wanted with your things. And the kids? We talked to them this morning before you woke up. We explained that we had been living in your house without paying you, that we had spent your money without permission, that we had been unfair to you. How did they react? Matt asked if we were going to be homeless. Rachel asked if you hated us. We told them the truth, that it depends on us, on whether we can learn to respect you. I stayed silent, processing. Valerie continued. Matt remembered something. He said, "It's like when I made fun of Carlos at school and the teacher told me bullies never win." And Rachel said, "So, Dad was Grandma's bully?" I got a lump in my throat. They are good kids. They are your grandkids. They have your intelligence and your way of seeing things clearly. Valerie, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be brutally honest. Whatever. If Scott told you it's him or me, that you have to choose between your husband and your mother, who would you choose? The silence that followed was eternal. Valerie looked at the floor, then the window, then her hands. Finally, she looked me in the eyes. Before this week, I would have told you him, without hesitation. Because he was my present, because he slept beside me every night, because I depended financially on him, even though in reality he depended on you. And now I don't know. And I think that doubt is an answer in itself, because if I really loved Scott the way I should, there wouldn't be doubt. But there is. And that terrifies me. Why does it terrify you? Because it means these 5 years were a lie, that I stayed with him out of fear, not love, that I sacrificed my relationship with you to maintain a marriage that maybe was never as solid as I thought. Valerie, does he treat you well? When you are alone? When no one sees you? Does he respect you? She took too long to answer, and that pause told me everything. He has a strong character, she said finally. Sometimes he says hurtful things. But then he apologizes. He says he's stressed about money, about work, about everything. Has he raised a hand to you? No. Never. But his words sometimes hurt more than a hit, like the words he said to me at dinner. I approached and took her hands. They were cold, trembling. Honey, I need you to understand something. I am not forcing you to choose either him or me. I am forcing you to choose yourself, to decide what kind of life you want, what kind of marriage, what kind of person you want to be. I'm scared. I know. I was scared too. But do you know what I discovered? That the fear of being alone is worse when you are accompanied by people who make you feel alone. True loneliness isn't being physically alone. It's being surrounded by people who don't see you. Like you were with us. Exactly. Do you forgive me, Mom? The question floated in the air. Did I forgive her? Could I forgive 5 years of emotional abandonment, of silent complicity, of prioritizing a man over her own mother? I forgive you, I said finally. But forgiveness doesn't mean things go back to how they were before. It means I am willing to build something new, something better. If you are too, I am, I swear. Then prove it tomorrow at 5 with your answer. She nodded, hugged me, and for the first time in 5 years, that hug felt real. Not forced, not guilty. Real. When she left my room, I sat on the bed looking at the wall. I thought about Henry, about how he would have handled all this, probably with more toughness than me. Henry didn't tolerate disrespect. He used to say that family was the most important thing, but that respect was the glue that held it together. "I'm doing it right, love," I whispered to the air. There was no answer, but in my heart I felt yes. That after 5 years of losing myself, I was finally finding the way back. That night I ate alone in the kitchen, a simple sandwich with a glass of water. I didn't make anything for anyone else. And when Matt came down looking for food, I looked at him and said, "There's ham and bread in the fridge. Can you make yourself something? You're not going to cook, Grandma? Today you're mad at us." I approached and caressed his hair. "I'm not mad. I'm tired. But I'm working on stopping being tired. Understand?" "I think so. Dad said we were unfair to you." "Your dad is right." "I'm sorry, Grandma." "I'm sorry too, sweetheart. Sorry you had to see all this." "Are we going to leave your house?" "I don't know yet. Your parents decide that tomorrow. I don't want to leave. I like living here. Although I understand if you want us to leave. My teacher says everyone deserves respect, even grandparents." I smiled sadly, especially grandparents. I hugged him. And in that hug, I remembered why I was fighting. Not just for me, also for them. To teach them that love without respect is not love. That family is not an excuse for abuse. That older people are not disposable. I went up to my room and prepared to sleep. Tomorrow would be Monday. Tomorrow at 5 p.m. I would know if my family would choose to respect me or if they would choose to leave. And although it hurt not knowing the answer, for the first time in years I slept with a clear conscience, because I had finally spoken my truth. And that, regardless of what happened tomorrow, was already a victory. Monday dawned with brutal clarity. I got up early, dressed carefully, black dress pants, crisp white blouse, my pearls. I wanted to look like a woman who knew her value. I ate breakfast alone, black coffee and toast. Simple, sufficient. At 9, I left the house. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I no longer had to give explanations. I took a taxi to the bank. I needed to confirm that all the changes were in order. The account executive, a young woman named Patricia 2OS, received me with a professional smile. "Mrs. Reynolds, everything is ready. The rents from your units are now deposited directly into your personal account. Mr. Davies no longer has access, and he knows it. He received an official notification last Friday." Perfect. Patricia showed me the statements. In 2 months, when the next rent was deposited, I would have full control over my income again, $3,500 monthly that I could use however I wanted. For me, for my needs, for my future. "Anything else I can do for you?" Patricia asked. "Yes, I want to open an additional savings account. Separate, with a specific goal." "What would that goal be?" "A small apartment for one person. Just in case." Patricia nodded, understanding. She didn't ask questions. Surely she had seen similar cases. Older women regaining their independence, preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. I left the bank feeling powerful. I had options. I wasn't trapped anymore. I walked through the city without a fixed destination. I entered a bookstore and bought 3 novels I had wanted to read for years but never had time. I entered an elegant cafe and ordered a cappuccino with a piece of carrot cake. I sat by the window and read 30 pages of one of the novels. No one interrupted me. No one needed me. And it was glorious. At 3 p.m., I returned home. I found Valerie in the living room. She was sitting on the sofa with her hands clasped, nervous. Scott wasn't there. "Where is your husband?" I asked. "He went out to look for work." "Seriously, Mom, he went to 3 places today. Auto shops. He is willing to work as an employee if necessary." "That is good." "Mom, I need to tell you something before 5 arrives." I sat across from her. "I'm listening." "Last night, after everyone fell asleep, I lay awake thinking about everything, about these 5 years, about who I was before getting married and who I became after. And what I discovered is that I lost something. Something important. My dad always told me, 'Valerie, never let anyone extinguish your light.' And I let Scott extinguish it, little by little, without realizing it." "He asked you to extinguish it?" "Not directly, but every time I had a different opinion, he got annoyed. Every time I wanted to do something without him, he got jealous. And I, instead of defending myself, adapted. I made myself small so he would feel big. And with you, it was worse. because you were stronger than me, more secure. And I think he felt threatened by that, by your independence, by your intelligence. And instead of defending myself and you, I let him make you small too." Her voice broke. I waited in silence while she recovered her composure. "This week, when I saw all the documents, when I heard everything you had achieved, everything you built with Dad, I realized something. You are not the useless old woman," Scott said. "You are the smartest woman I know. And I was so stupid I didn't see it." "You weren't stupid. You were human. Love blinds sometimes. It wasn't love, Mom. It was fear disguised as love." The words hung between us, truths so painful they cut when spoken. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "I don't know yet, but I know I can't go on like this. Scott and I need therapy, couples, individual, whatever, because if we are going to stay together, it has to be for real. Not out of fear, not out of convenience, but because we choose to work on this. And if it doesn't work, then I will learn to be alone. Like you. I am not alone, Valerie. I am with myself, which is different." She smiled sadly. "You're right." At 4:30, Scott arrived. He was wearing jeans and a work shirt. He looked tired, defeated, but there was also something different in his eyes, something resembling humility. "Mother-in-law," he said upon seeing me, "can we talk before 5? "Go ahead." He sat next to Valerie. He took a deep breath several times before speaking. "I'm not going to try to justify myself. What I did was wrong, very wrong. I took your money without asking, I treated you with contempt, and worst of all, I convinced your daughter that it was okay." "Why?" I asked directly. "Because I felt less. Always. You and Henry had achieved so much, and I was just a mechanic who wanted to be a businessman. And when my business failed, instead of admitting it, I kept pretending, I kept spending. I kept living as if everything were fine. And the easiest way to feel big was to make you feel small. And now I understand that doesn't make me big, it makes me a coward and an abuser." The word hung suspended in the air. Abuser. He had said it, not me. "Today I went to 3 shops," he continued. "In 2, they told me they would contact me. In the 3rd, they offered for me to start tomorrow. As a basic mechanic, the pay is low, $3,000 a month. But it's something. It's a start. Are you going to take it?" "Yes. And Valerie is going to take extra shifts at the hospital. Between the 2 of us, we can scrape together $6,000 a month. It's not much, but it's honest. It's real. And my proposal?" Valerie and Scott looked at each other. Then she spoke. "We want to take the first option, the 6 months, the rent of $800, the payment of the $40,000 in installments, and the conditions, all of them, the respect, the therapy, everything. Are you sure, Scott?" "It's 4 years of payments, $800 monthly. I'm sure, and if it takes me longer, I'll keep paying you until it's settled. It's the least I can do." "And the master bedroom is yours," Valerie said firmly. "We are going to vacate it this weekend, and we are going to help you move. And the kids." "We already talked to them," Scott said. "We explained everything. Matt asked if he could help clean the yard to pay Grandma. Rachel said she wants to cook with you on Sundays to make your favorite food." I got a lump in my throat. "They don't have to do that." "Yes, we do have to do it," Valerie said, "because for 5 years we made you invisible, and now we need you to become visible again. For us, for them, for yourself." I looked at the clock. 10 minutes to 5. "All right," I said finally. "I accept. But I want it to be clear, this is your last chance. If you disrespect me again, if you miss a payment again, if you make me feel like you made me feel these 5 years again, there will be no second option." "Understood. Understood," they said in unison. "And one more thing. I want the grandkids to spend time with me. Real time, not just being in the same house, but talking, cooking together, telling me about their lives. Because that is what hurt me the most, losing the connection with them." "I promise," Valerie said with tears in her eyes. I took out my phone and called Maurice. "We have a decision." They took the first option, prepare the documents for them to sign tomorrow. "Perfect. I'll see you at 10 a.m. I hung up. The three of us sat in silence. It wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was a silence of relief, of exhaustion, of fragile hope. "Mom," Valerie said softly, "do you think someday we can be a family again?" "We are already family, Valerie. We always were. The problem is that for 5 years we were a broken family. Now we have the opportunity to be a healthy family. But that requires work, every day, from everyone." "We will do it," she promised. That night we had dinner together, the 5 of us. We ordered Chinese takeout because no one had the energy to cook, and for the first time in years, the conversation flowed. The grandkids told me about school. Scott asked my opinion on something. Valerie poured me tea without my asking. They were small gestures. But after 5 years of invisibility, every small gesture felt monumental. Before going to sleep, Valerie stopped me on the stairs. "Thank you for not giving up on us." "I didn't give up on you. I gave up on being mistreated. It's different." "I know. And that's why I admire you more than ever." I hugged her, and in that hug, I felt something I had lost. The certainty that my daughter loved me. Maybe she had forgotten how to show it, but the love was still there, buried under layers of fear and bad decisions. And now we were digging it out together. The first 2 months were complicated. Scott started his job at the shop. He came home with hands stained with grease and his pride wounded. A man who was once an owner, now taking orders from a boss 20 years younger than him. I saw it in his eyes every night. The frustration, the shame. But every 2 weeks, without fail, he gave me $1,500, half his paycheck. Valerie added another $1,500 from her extra shifts, and they deposited it into my account with a signed receipt. Moving into the master bedroom was cathartic. Entering the room I shared with Henry for 4 decades made me cry, but it also made me feel like I was recovering pieces of myself I had lost. Family therapy started the 3rd week. A psychologist named Dr. Mendez, who held nothing back. The first session was brutal. "Scott," she said bluntly, "are you aware that your behavior toward your mother-in-law qualifies as financial and emotional abuse?" Scott tensed. "I never hit her." Abuse doesn't always leave visible bruises. Sometimes the scars are internal. Session after session, Dr. Mendez was unearthing uncomfortable truths. Scott had grown up in a family where his father treated his maternal grandmother like a servant. He simply replicated the pattern without questioning it. "It's not an excuse," the doctor said, "but it is an explanation, and recognizing the origin of the behavior is the first step to changing it." Things improved slowly. Very slowly. Scott started saying thank you when I cooked, asking, "Do you need anything?" before going to the store. Small changes that before would have been invisible, but now shone like beacons in the dark. Valerie changed too. She started defending me. "The first time Scott made a sarcastic comment about my food a little salty, isn't it?" Valerie cut him off immediately. "If you don't like it, you cook." The silence that followed was spectacular. Scott looked at her surprised, then lowered his gaze. "You're right. Sorry, mother-in-law. It's good." But not everything was linear progress. In the 3rd month, Scott had a relapse. He came home from work especially frustrated. His boss had scolded him in front of other mechanics for a mistake. Scott entered the house, slamming doors, cursing. I was in the kitchen making chicken noodle soup. He passed by me, saw the pot, and muttered, "Soup again? Can't you make something different?" It was instinctive, automatic. The old Scott emerging in a moment of weakness. But this time I didn't stay quiet. I turned off the stove. I turned to him. "Excuse me?" He realized his mistake immediately. "Mother-in-law, I didn't mean to." "Yes, you did. And you know what, Scott? I'm going to remind you of something. You have 2 options. Either you appreciate what there is, or you make your own food. But what you are not going to do is disrespect me in my house again. Is that clear?" Valerie had entered just in time to hear everything. She stood next to me. "Mom is right. Either you apologize for real, or tonight you eat out." Scott looked at both of us, and for the first time, I saw something I had never seen in him, genuine shame. "You're right. I'm sorry. Really, I'm sorry. I had a shitty day, and I took it out on you. That's not okay." "No," I said firmly. "It's not okay. And if it happens again, I will remind you that you warned me this wouldn't work. It won't happen again." And it didn't happen again. That was the last significant incident. But then came the blow no one expected. 4 months after the ultimatum, Scott came home pale as a ghost. It was 3 p.m. He never arrived at that time. "What happened?" Valerie asked, alarmed. "I got fired." The silence was absolute. "Why?" I asked. "Staff cuts. I'm the last one hired. I was the first one out." Valerie dropped onto the sofa. "Oh my God. And now what do we do? We have to pay you $800 in 5 days." "I know," Scott said with a broken voice. "I know." I watched them both crumble. Part of me, the hurt part, felt dark satisfaction. See, they can't fulfill it. They can't keep their promises. But another part of me, the part that was still a mother and grandmother, felt something different. "Do you have savings?" I asked. $1,000 only. "And you, Valerie?" $500. We were going to use it for Rachel's tuition next month. I ran the numbers mentally. $1,000. $500 between the two. Missing another $500 just to complete the rent, debt payment. I could demand the full payment. I could use this as an excuse to evict them, as I had warned. I could sue for the entire debt with interest. Scott looked at me with eyes of a cornered animal. "Mother-in-law, I swear I'm going to look for work today. Tomorrow. The day after. I'm going to knock on every door necessary. I just need a little time." "How much time?" "A month. 2 max. Please." Valerie knelt in front of me. Literally knelt. "Mom, please. We've been trying, really. It's not for lack of will. It's circumstances." "Circumstances are part of life," I said with a hard voice. "And you should have foreseen this. You should have saved more. You should have had a plan B." "You're right," Valerie admitted, crying. "You're totally right. But I beg you, don't kick us out. Not now. The kids are in the middle of the school year. Scott is going to get a job. I'm going to take more shifts. We are going to pay you everything, down to the last dollar." I looked at them both, begging, desperate, humiliated, and I realized something. This was exactly what they needed to experience. Not the public humiliation Scott put me through, but the private humiliation of recognizing that your actions have consequences, that the world doesn't revolve around them, that when you depend on someone, you must treat them with respect. "All right," I said finally, "I'm going to give you 2 months." "Seriously?" Scott couldn't believe it, but with conditions. "This month you pay what you can. The $1,500 you have. Next month you pay double to compensate. And if in 2 months Scott doesn't have a job, we sell the car. The Explorer you bought with my money. But I need the car to look for work. Then get a job before 2 months pass." Scott swallowed hard. "Deal. And one more thing. Starting today, every dollar you spend, you write down in a notebook. Every dollar you earn, you write down. And at the end of every week, you show it to me. I want total transparency. Because my trust was broken, and it has to be earned again. Little by little." "We'll do it," Valerie promised. The next 2 months were hell for them. Scott knocked on doors at 50 places. He was rejected at 48. In the 2 that accepted him, the wages were miserable. He chose the one that paid the most, minimum wage at an auto parts store. Valerie worked 1 4-hour shifts. She arrived home dragging herself, with barely enough energy to eat. The grandkids became more independent out of necessity. Matt learned to heat up food. Rachel learned to wash her own clothes. And I watched them, not with cruelty, but with the satisfaction of someone who knows that difficult lessons are the ones remembered most. In the next therapy session, Dr. Mendez asked me, "Sophia, how do you feel watching your family struggle like this?" "Conflicted," I admitted. "Part of me feels pity, but another part feels this is necessary, that they needed to hit rock bottom to learn. And if they don't make it, then they will learn another lesson, that actions have permanent consequences." Scott, who was in the session, spoke. "Mother-in-law, do you hate me?" "I don't hate you, Scott. I have never hated you. But I am not going to save you from the consequences of your own decisions either. Because that wouldn't help you. It would make you weaker." "You're right," he said with a broken voice. "And you know what the worst part is? That now I understand how you felt these 5 years. Working until exhaustion and feeling it's not enough. Giving everything and having no one value it. It's horrible." "Yes," I said softly. "It is horrible. That's why I never want to feel it again. You won't feel it again. I swear on my children. And for the first time, I believed him. Because they weren't just words. They were words backed by actions, by effort, by sacrifice. At the end of the second month, Scott handed me $3,000. He had gathered it with his paycheck, with odd jobs on weekends, fixing neighbors' cars, saving every cent he could. "Here it is," he said, putting the envelope in my hand. "Complete. Well done. Can I keep the car?" "For now, yes. But it remains a reminder of what you did wrong. Every time you see it, remember." "I will." And as I put that envelope with the money away, I realized something. I wasn't just recovering my money, I was recovering my dignity, and they were learning theirs, because dignity isn't given, it is earned, with respect, with effort, with humility. And finally, after 5 years, we were all learning that lesson.